we've had this conversation in the past, as I just mentioned, but I'm going to really get into the weeds today. Like I mentioned, Nuke got released today from the Cardinals. It's Friday, the 26th, and I did not see that coming. All signs pointed that he was going to stay with the Cardinals and just ride it out with Kyler Murray, and then he gets released. So, yeah, that throws a wrench into things, if you ask me. And what's really awesome is that you can sign him now off the streets, right? You don't have to haggle with the Cardinals about trade compensation. No more talking about what the Bills have to give up to get DeAndre Hopkins. No more, hey, let's trade Ed Oliver to get DeAndre Hopkins. No more, hey, let's trade a second. No. It's over. He is still a very good receiver. And he only played 9 games last year, right? He missed 6 because he got suspended for PDs. And then he missed the last 2 games, which I'm not really sure what the reason was. Maybe it was injury related. Hard to say, but the Cardinals were way out of the running at that point. So they probably were just like, meh. And not to mention Kyler Murray was out. But even with that in mind, that he only played in 9 games, he caught 64 catches on 96 targets for 717 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's an average of 11.2 yards per reception. That's still pretty productive. And he was getting production from guys like, oh my God, Colt McCoy? Am I wrong there? Colt McCoy still out here tossing the pigskin? And DeAndre Hopkins was still getting his. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Von Miller, he's been actively trying to recruit people on this team. He's doing his job again as the Bills' GM or secondary GM, because we know Von wants to be a GM one day, by trying to get Nuke Hopkins on this team. He did the same thing with OBJ, and, well, it didn't work out with OBJ, but now he's got his eyes on Hopkins. And Deion Dawkins messaged him too. Well, not messaged him, but publicly put out there like, hey, Nuke, there's an open locker right next to me. We could be buddies. It's great. It's just so cool to see how much pull that this team is trying to do, or how much effort they're trying to do to like corral in Nuke Hopkins. Now, I've talked about the good stuff about Nuke, but I do have concerns, right? And one of them is that he's 30 years old. I'm 30 years old. I don't feel like a spring chicken anymore, and I'm not comparing myself to Nuke Hopkins, but I definitely felt differently if you told me like, hey, I was like 25 as opposed to now. Things hurt a lot more, and I'm just an average person. This is a like elite NFL wide receiver, so I assume he can, he probably is built different, if you know what I'm talking about with the egg thing. He's built different compared to me, much different. But he's, like I said, he's still a top tier athlete and arguably one of the best wide receivers when healthy in the NFL. But let's say the Bills sign him, he would immediately become the oldest wide receiver in the room. And speaking of like age of the wide receiver room, let's talk about that real quick. Stephon Diggs, 29 years old. He's going to be 30 by the end of the season. Deontay Hardy, 25 years old. Gabe Davis, 24 years old. Excuse me. Khalil Shakir, 23 years old. And Trent Sherfield, 27 years old. The room's kind of getting older, right? Do we really need another old guy in there? I don't know. But it would be really cool to get Nuke Hopkins. And then there's the question, is there room for a guy like DeAndre Hopkins? That's a valid question, and something I can't believe I'm actually questioning right now, but like, how many wide receivers are the Bills going to keep? I personally think they're probably going to keep like maybe 5 or 6. Last year, for the good part, they ran with 5, had some practice call-ups with Cole Beasley and John Brown, Smoke Brown, but I don't know. Like, if they run with 5, who are you going to keep? Diggs, Davis, Nuke, Hopkins, and then maybe Shakir, and then you have Hardy and Sherfield battling it out for that 5th spot. And not to mention there's other wide receivers on the roster right now, but I'm not counting them because I just don't see a path for them to make the team. It's a good problem to have. And I think it's a good safe assumption if the Bills were to sign DeAndre Hopkins, he immediately becomes wide receiver 2. So Gabe Davis gets pushed down to wide receiver 3. Then you got Hardy, Shakir, and Sherfield battling it out for wide receiver 4 and potentially 5. One of them would probably either be a healthy scratch or maybe not even make the roster, which is kind of crazy. I don't think any of them would be. I take that back. I think all of them would make the roster, but one of them would probably be a healthy scratch. And what about this Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox equation thing that we have going on? And you're probably thinking, hey, Andrew, we're talking about wide receivers. Why are we bringing in the tight ends into this? Well, the general consensus is that by the Buffalo Bills drafting Dalton Kincaid, that they were looking to shift more from an 11 personnel to a 12 personnel, or 11.5 if you ask Brandon Beane. So 2 tight ends on the field. Assuming that that's what the Bills are shifting towards, then you really only have 3 other spots left on the field for wide receivers and running back. 5 for the linemen, 1 for Josh, 2 for Dawson Knox and Kincaid, then Diggs, Hopkins, and then you have 1 more spot for a wide receiver or a running back. Who's that going to be? There's been a strong emphasis for the Buffalo Bills to get the running game on the road. Is it James Cook? Is it Damian Harris? Is it Trent Sherfield? Hardy? Is it another lineman, Jumbo? Like, I just generally don't know. And these are the legit questions I've been asking myself since this news broke. Like, how is this going to work?